In this lecture, we are discussing selection, recruitment and training of employees, manpower in organizations. So, we will see how best recruitment, selection and training methods could be utilized for managing organizations. One of the important aspects of selection process is attracting quality workforce. In today's world of globalization and competition, the important aspect is that my organization must have the best people, and so I would like to select very carefully. Personnel selection lies as a boundary between the organization and the external environment. So, it is related to external organizations. People, for example, if I am trying to have the fresh recruits, they are coming from different colleges, different engineering colleges for example, or different management institutes, and they have to enter into my organization. And so, there is a boundary, they are entering from this organization to this particular organization. So, that boundary line we can call as the selection process. Okay. So, this also means matching of the individuals or the individual needs, goals, abilities, interests and aptitudes to organizational requirements. Obviously, if you need a person for doing a particular job, you will like to match the needs, the personal needs as well as the organizational needs, and see that the best results are achieved. Traditionally, we talk of fitting square peg in the round hole or square peg in the square hole. Some of the writers have written this. Okay. Can you look at this analogy? Square peg in the round hole. Can you fit in? Okay. Square peg in a round hole. Can you fit in? Perhaps not. So, you need to fit in the square peg in the square hole only for the best fit. Okay. This is the philosophy perhaps of selection process. So, round in round, square in square. Okay. That means the person who is required for a particular job has to fit into that particular job. If person is a misfit, then the whole process of selection perhaps does not give us any result. Okay. So, in the recent years, technically sophisticated efforts have been actually documented for the selection, recruitment and training methods. Okay. So, in the recent years we are talking about methods like various kinds of testing and so on. So, there are four main principles we can put it of the selection process: commitment, planning, action and evaluation. Commitment of employees, planning of the organization, action and the evaluation of organization about that particular individual or particular particular situation. So, recruitment and selection of people from inside the organization and outside the organization may be possible, and this starts when the organization identifies a need for a person or people in congruence with organizational needs. The process ends when these needs are met. So, there is a need of the organization, there is a need of the individual, and we try to match these needs and then select the person and hire him for the job. So, this matching is very important. This is also a strategic decision then. Very briefly, we touched upon the strategic thinking and strategic management in our earlier section. And so, when we are looking at the strategic approach, selection, recruitment perhaps is taking the long term view and understanding what is important for the organization's future. So, we are taking long term view. Okay. For recruitment and selection, this means comparing the skills and abilities one has and what is required for the future and how this gap can be filled. So, you have to do the requirement to create the planning, and you have to create a requirement for say the expansion plan that you are undergoing, or the retirement of people, and so the new people have to come, or new, for example, new ventures that you might be taking up for that. So, whatever be the case, there has to be a strategic decision about selection of people. So, there is a strategic dimension, strategic approach to the selection and recruitment of employees too. Personnel selection is the boundary, as we have discussed, boundary line between the organization and the external environment then. So, now you clearly understand that this is that boundary line, okay, for before which you were not in the organization, after which you are in the organization. So, that boundary line, we are talking about that particular process today, okay, that how the selection is done, how it should be done, how it is being done in many organizations, across many countries, or the global scenario we can say. This refers to matching of the individual's abilities, needs and goals, and one's lifestyle with the goals and the climate of the organization. We have already discussed this, but maybe once again I am trying to put that in a few different words. So, when we are looking at the matching of the individual's abilities and needs and goals, so that means individual is there and organization is there, and we are trying to match both. Only then the success of a selection process perhaps could be achieved. Basically, the need is to fit the square peg in the square hole, and so we have discussed that just short while ago, that not in the the round peg in the square hole. You are understanding now this whole aspect. Okay? So, if you are asked a question, how do you explain the square peg in the square hole concept in the selection process, you can answer this particular question by saying that we have to match the needs, abilities, perhaps the other aspects of the individual with that of the organization. So, this brings us to understand the approaches to the selection process. And the selection process, even though in both cases we are doing matching, but in the recent years we are finding that two models have emerged. The first model is the human engineering approach or human engineering model, and the second one is the selection model. The human engineering model is coming from of course the point of view of human engineering, which is a man work interface, man machine interface. Okay, it did start as a man machine interface, but today when we are talking about human engineering model, we are trying to look at the man and the environment matching in interface. But it begins with the idea that man has certain capacities, certain skills, certain aspirations, certain desires, and organization must try to capitalize on that. So, select this person and then see where this person could be fitted in my organization. Okay. The other way around, the selection model, which is of course a traditional model and which goes on everywhere, is that we advertise, we ask people to apply, and then we see that who is best suited for my requirement. So, even though there is very little difference between the two, in both cases we are trying to match the individual and the organization, but in the first case we are looking at the potentials of the person and then trying to see that where he or she could be best fitted. In the second case, we are saying that these are the vacancies and come on apply, and we will see that who could be selected. So, the vacancies are perhaps the first requirement, okay, not the individual. So, the human engineering approach is trying to suggest that if you want to do a real good business, then if you have some person, you find some potential, try that person remains with you for as long as perhaps possible, because you will get the best results. Okay. Don't start looking at that, okay, there is no vacancy and so at this moment we can't hire this. If you have a best person, try to put that best person wherever your organization perhaps is needing a person like that. Okay. So, this has long term we can say benefit for the organization, because if the person has that kind of a potential choice, he will also enjoy working in that field. Okay. So, the possibility of his remaining in your organization increases, whereas if you are selecting a person because you have a position right now, okay, the person comes and many a times perhaps he finds that there is yet another job and he very quickly shifts to another job, increasing the attrition rate in your company. Obviously, every time you hire a person, socialize him, give him training, and then give him some responsibility, and then he quits. So, in this whole process, in fact, according to some writings, this whole process of selection and recruitment is very expensive for the organization. And if every time people come and go, in other words, if there is a there's too much of manpower turnover in your company, then you aren't really doing good business. So, you have to retain people for as long as perhaps you can, but not retain just for the sake of retaining. They have to be the people contributing to your organization. So, for that this whole selection process has to be considered. From here I am discussing now with you the basic selection model, which normally is being considered in most of the organizations. And here the basic selection model, we begin with the examination of the job. We select certain criterion. Criterion, for example, if you are selecting someone for a job of a mechanic or job of a teacher, you have to select what are the attributes that you would like to have in that individual. So, you have to select certain criterion, and then what are the selection instruments or methods that you are going to use. Then you ask the person, or you try to test the person in that measurement, that performance criterion. Okay. So, if that is poor, and if then we have to reject the person, and if that is good, then we have to select the person. Sometimes in the selection process we may reject people, and then we are not getting people. Maybe we can change our criteria, maybe we can try that, and again repeat the process of selection. So, that kind of a model normally we are using, even though perhaps you have never given a thought that you are actually going through so many steps, but you are going through so many steps in the selection model. Okay. So, we have discussed two selection models, two models. One is the traditional selection model, the other one is the human engineering model for selection of employees in organizations. So, some of the available criteria I will discuss with you briefly before we move on to the other aspects. The first, of course, some of the traditional criteria I am going to discuss. Records, okay. These are your own records, and based on which you could perhaps get selected. Use of ratings are there. When we are doing selection, there could be number of judges, and they might do rating. So, we have already prepared our selection criteria, and there are rating forms given to all the judges, and they will judge, say 5 persons are there, and they are all giving you the ratings on different issues. Okay. Well, in addition to other criteria which we are going to discuss just now. Then the application blanks, all of you are aware of this fact that for any post you are going to actually fill in an application form and this application blanks, this is an application form, and you are filling in the various required information you are giving. Okay. So, based on that we can do the shortlisting. This is a very traditional way of doing things. And then of course, we come to the interviews, and interviews, as we said just now, that there could be number of interviewers, and there could be a guided interview in which the interview committee before selection decides that we have to look into these things, and then they can have some kind of a form with them, and the other one is the open ended interview. You can ask any question or anything. So, when we are interviewing our for recruitment, we are interviewing people, then we interview them separately, and also we are looking at the guided interview, and then certain the application blanks and other things. So, the interviews could be guided and could be open. So, we could combine both the kinds for the best results. So, we can have at the end of the interview we can have the number of judges, they will give us their ideas on the particular criteria, as well as based on the interview they will also give their remarks. So, when we collate all these, then we can arrive at a final conclusion about the interviews, and then we add this with the other points that the person might have earned in his application blank and the other factors. But in addition to this, in the recent years, something very important that has come up is the use of psychological testing. Many of you are aware of it, but let me repeat that once again, that psychological testing is to assess the person in terms of some of his intrinsic attributes, which may not be possible for us to actually find out during the interview or during the application blanks. So, there are number of types of psychological tests. Some are well, I'll come to these details also short while from now. We might select you and we might give you a performance test in which some equipment is there and you have to perform on that. So, for example, if I am wanting to select someone for a pilot's job, you want to become a pilot, I might see the other measures I am already using, the selection interview and application blanks and other things. But in addition to this, I might like to know what is your reaction time. Is it? Do you understand? Have you seen a reaction time equipment? Perhaps if you are very keen on that, so you can look for that in one of the labs of behavioral sciences or psychology lab. Anywhere in any of the universities, perhaps you will get that. So, in reaction time we are trying to see, so is the fast reaction time better or the slow reaction time better? Yeah, okay. So, you want the reaction time has to be very quick, and so through that equipment we can measure the reaction time. We can measure the stress level. So, there are equipment using which we can measure your stress level. We can also look at for example, for some other jobs, say the memory and the learning capabilities of people. Okay. If there is a job, so I gave you one example of the selection for a job of a pilot. Then see the pilots, they have to use the displays and the kind of see if there is an emergency, how quickly the person can do that. So, the reaction time we all differ. Some people have very quick reaction time, some have the delayed reaction time, and if I am measuring that, I am in a position to say that okay, this person is perhaps more suitable than others. Okay. Also the stress under emergency, how will a person perhaps react? Using some equipment we can make use of that, and it could also be a questionnaire based measure for stress. So, there are a number of equipment. If I am selecting someone for a job in which finger dexterity is required, there are many jobs in industries for which finger dexterity is required. Well, women have better finger dexterity generally. So, there are equipment in which we call as the finger dexterity equipment, and we can see that in how many minutes say person can use a particular can complete particular cycles of that equipment. So, we can use finger dexterity and then suggest that okay, this person can be more suitable to this kind of a job. Okay. So, there are many types of tests. Of course, there are many sophisticated tests now available, and in addition to this we have many psychological tests which are paper and pencil type, which are on the projective technique type, and so on. And some of these are the speed tests. Speed, that means where the speed becomes important. Okay. In some tests speed may not be that much important. So, when we are looking at psychological tests, we have some of the tests that we are very we are using very often. For example, MBTI we are using very often, Myers-Briggs indicator, personality types, in which I can find out whether you are a good decision maker, whether you are intuitive, okay, and so on. So, there are many qualities which we can assess using MBTI. Then there is FIRO-B, there is a test on locus of control, there is a test on Machiavellism, there are tests on values, okay, in addition to other tests like the test on the stress. For stress management we can use these kinds of tests. So, number of types of tests are available from the psychological literature, which is now embedded into the whole management literature. Okay, lot of this has been now into that. So, that has been brought in there. The projective techniques that we use, also the psychological tests, in which I might show you some pictures and some photographs or some very abstract figures, and I ask you to write something about it, and then the analysis is done. Okay, these are to look into deep into yourself. Okay, but you need training for that. You need trained persons, for using these psychological tests. So, number of types of tests are available to us. Some of the tests are, these are also psychological tests, but these are the achievement tests. Okay. So, we make use of the achievement tests. We have certain aptitude tests. We have intelligence tests, and intelligence tests, see the first we have to understand the concept. We use intelligence tests which could be paper and pencil type, or which could be culture fair test, in which you do not have any language written, or you do not have any kind of a indicator. You have just few perhaps figures, and you have to work on that. So, time is an important aspect of these tests, and you have to just work on some of those tests, which we call as the culture fair test. Okay. So, culture fair test of intelligence we are talking about. There are number of tests of intelligence. Some of those might look like a general knowledge test, okay, but we have to look very deeply into what exactly we want to do, and how do we actually define the concept of intelligence, and overall our understanding of that. Okay. Certainly, it is not synonymous to memory. Memory is an important aspect of intelligence. We have to look into the concept. Then the personality tests are there. Are you an introvert? Extrovert? What are you? Okay, you like meeting people, or you are a loner? Okay, are you a great enthusiast? How are you looking at your life? Do you think that everything that you do in your life is governed because of your own actions, or because of God or luck or chance? Okay? We actually internalize such values in our minds, and these are the governing forces for our personality. So, we may use some such tests also, and of course, the list is very long if we are talking about personality tests. Okay. In this course, we are not discussing in much great details, only wherever reference comes we are talking about on the personality aspect of managers or employees. Maybe briefly we will touch upon that in some of the later lectures. Then there are interest tests, and these tests could be paper and pencil tests. These could be speed and power tests. That means, are you looking at the speed of your mental capacity, or are you looking at the concept? Okay. So, we call these as the speed and power tests. Then when we are conducting these tests, different arrangements could be done, and this is here we are talking about individual and group tests. So, some tests are there in which I have to call each person. So, each interviewer comes to me and I give him or her a test and then arrive at the conclusion. But some tests are such which I can give the whole class, sitting all of you, I can give this test, and then we can collect the papers and then arrive at the conclusions. So, different objectives are there and different tests are there. Then as I said for the intelligence test, and I said that culture fair test. So, there are tests which are language and non-language. So, that culture fair test I was talking to you is a non-language test. Okay. There could be tests in which no language is used. So, there are many possibilities of some performance tests also. For example, for intelligence we might give you some performance. Okay. There is no language, but we just ask you to conduct something or some performance may be there. Okay. So, the performance tests are also there, okay, in which you have to do some performance of something, and then we come to a conclusion that in this particular performance what have you achieved and how quickly have you achieved this. There are forced choice tests also. We give you choices and we make you select something. Okay. So, you do not have any choice beyond that, so you have to choose one of the alternatives out of the given alternatives. Okay. So, that is we use forced choice tests also. We also use critical incident tests. In a critical incident test, you are put under a particular situation and particular we can say incident, and we try to observe your behavior. Okay. So, we can artificially also create a situation. Sometimes it may be a very natural incident, and we can observe somebody's behavior, say in an emergency situation or in a situation of accident, how the person behaved. Okay. So, we can collect data like that also, but then while we are doing selection process we do not have that opportunity. So, we can design a critical incident test, okay, and then ask the person to suddenly he is there, and then we create a situation and let us see how the person behaves. Okay. So, it is possible to also collect some information about the individual in those situations. Okay. So, selection measures that we have which we could use are many. So, we have already discussed that there are job application blanks, interviews. This is just I am just repeating some of these tests. Okay. Okay. So, this brings us to the next issue of our discussion, that is, after selection and recruitment of people in your organization, then next comes the issue of training. Now, once you have selected people and the person has been recruited and perhaps posted in your organization, the issue there is that if a person does not remain in your organization or he does not perform according to what you expect him to do, then there is a loss also in terms of your say budget. Okay, it may be a big loss to you. So, to retain people in your organization, to refresh him for the better performance, okay, and for overall organizational effectiveness, we need to retain people and give them training so that they remain in your organization and our organization gets benefited. Okay. So, this brings us to a very close topic. In fact, I have put these 3 lectures one after another as the selection, recruitment and training, because we need to look into these as the managers of today. So, we will see training is a process which develops and improves the skills related to performance. So, there is a very close linkage between the selection, recruitment, placement of people, performance, okay, and then training. Okay. So, everything goes into a sequence. So, that is also a good business for an organization to actually put in some budget for training. Yeah. So, when you are doing the allocation of budget, recruitment, selection, all these the HR department has to be given some budget, but the training which is training and which comes under the HRD. Okay. So, this budget has to be allocated, and most of the companies are putting in more and more budget for the training of people. So, training is a process which develops and improves skills related to performance. Now, if you might think that okay, training can replace experience, perhaps that is not true. Training cannot replace experience. So, experience has its own benefits, training has its own benefits. And so, why training? Why is there a demand for training? That becomes important for us. Now, we will look into the demands for training. Demand for training are because of many reasons. We are moving in today the globalization age, and there is so much competition. Therefore, we will need training for various reasons. The first reason here I have listed is the advancement in knowledge. See, the knowledge is not static, it is growing, and it grows and grows and grows and grows. Okay. If you do not give training to people, then they remain wherever they had joined your organization. Only with little experience, of course, they will learn something, but if something new has come in other organizations or some new knowledge, say when we have the software or the any electronics or And you said these are some of the fields which are coming up so fast. If unless you give them training, how do you really compete in the global market? So, advances in knowledge become important aspect, and because of which we need to consider training as an important aspect of management. To improve manpower performance, obviously we have talked about that we need the best performance, and that is why training. To give equal opportunity to all employees. See, some employees are maybe little lesser, in terms of their earlier training, and so we need to give them equal opportunity by giving training. So, we can select people, those who need training, so that everyone is at par, and obviously your organization benefits. To cope up with competition, we have talked about this. The global competition, we have talked about this. In globalization, if you do not train your people, you are lagging behind. Also, you must have heard about the continuing education department. So, for continuing education, growth and advancement of employees, one needs to give training. So, the variables affecting training program, you might think that we just call people and give training. Let us try to analyze that what are the variables which will affect the training programs. Training programs are affected by number of variables. See, motivation of participants is an important aspect. Then the instructional variables, material presented, method of presentation, these are yet another group of aspects. Normally, in a training program, you will find that lot of importance is given to the factors like what are the instructional material, what are we going to give them as part of the training, what material is presented, lot of work is done, and method of presentation, whether we are using chalkboard, are we using lectures, are we going to take them for any visits, are we going to show them some video films, are we going to take them to a group discussion, are we going to take them to the actual workplace, are we going to show them the exact machine and the place where they will be working. So, when the method of presentation, when we are talking about, it means all kinds of methods of presentation, and with the advent of computers and with the advent of mass media that we have many more opportunities for development of material for and the method of presentation for training programs. And you must have seen and you are aware of this. But an important aspect which generally remains well, I will say overlooked or neglected is the motivation of participants. If people are not interested, then come what may, you may give training and you will find that the job is half done. So, when we are doing training, when we are trying to design a training program, one of the important aspects also would perhaps need your attention is that out of the people, who are the most motivated people to learn that? Okay. Isn't this a variable which you have never looked into, the aspect that you have never perhaps thought about? But we find that if people are not interested, then training program perhaps is going to be a waste of your budget, because at the end you find that people did not learn anything. out of that training program? Well, I will share one of my experience here. I was invited by one of the public sector organizations to give them training on some aspect of management. And when I was starting my course and we were discussing, they were from all over India and in Delhi. So, when I was starting my course, on the first day we had little introduction, and then I wanted to know that earlier what kind of a training you have undergone and what was your interest in coming for this training and all. See, normally when we start, then a little bit time, say a few minutes we spend on that. Surprisingly, I found quite a few said, well, in our organization, I am the training manager, and so I have been sent, for this training because I am the training manager, not those who have to do the performance, but the training manager himself was sent for training. Another group of people also gave me an idea that they were here because they were very much interested in visiting Delhi for a couple of weeks, and so they are here, not necessarily because they were motivated or the organization thought that they were the real people who need training. Okay. So, some such factors also affect the training programs. We have to look into some of these aspects while we are designing the training programs. So, when we are designing training programs, we have to look at number of other variables as well. So, here I am putting my thoughts into a systems approach to training, and you can see that first we have to define the objective of a training program. Okay, why this training? Training in which subject? Who will be the people? What do we expect to achieve? So, we have to formally define it and put that in some document. If you really want to have a very good training program. Okay. So, this could be done based on the brainstorming session in your organization, or whatever be the method you would like to actually achieve. Okay. Or you can observe that this is the area where our people need training, whatever be the method. Then you have to derive the contents. Based on the objectives, obviously you will derive the contents of the training program. Then we move on to design the method and the material, okay, which I have discussed just now. And so now we are ready for a training program. So, once you have designed your training program, what you have to see that the trainee motivation is also important. So, in any training program, the trainee motivation becomes very important, okay, and this gives us the effectiveness of the training program. So, whenever we are trying to design any training program for any group, then we have to see some of these aspects in order to make the effective training. So, the effectiveness of training is there, and the feedback of the effectiveness of this training, okay, this goes to the development of the contents for a particular training, to design of the method of training or the materials of training, and finally, how to make the training process work. Okay. Then of course, once we have done the training program, it is always a good idea to take feedback after the participants go back to their place of work, and if need be, we can repeat the training or we can redesign the training. The training methods or the training contents, we have to understand in terms of number of factors. For example, when the employees are there in an organization, we can divide the skills required for managers or employees at different levels. For example, at the lowest level in the employment, we need to give technical training, and so the technical skill is required. In the middle level in the organization, we need to give them technical training as well as human relations training. At the top level, perhaps we need to give them human relations training and conceptual training. Okay. So, technical, human relations, conceptual. These sets, well, we are not saying that there is a clear cut boundary on where this one ends and where that begins. Okay. Some authors have given us this idea in terms of the various skills which are required at different levels in the organization. And so, we can decide about training programs at different levels for different set of people. Okay. So, here when we are trying to design this training program, okay, some of the training programs that we have designed and we have actually conducted are say for example, on the communication training, we have done on the interpersonal training, we have also worked on the human engineering aspects, we have worked on the strategic management aspects. So, number of such issues come up on which we are actually organizing training. For example, many organizations invite us for training on transactional analysis, and transactional analysis is a theory of interpersonal behavior, and we are talking about that how best we can have the interpersonal transactions, in which we can make use of method like role playing. So, role playing is also one of the important methods of organizing training programs, particularly when senior managers are there. So, middle managers and senior managers are there. Role playing in terms of transactional analysis might become very beneficial. Otherwise, also at the lower level also, we can ask the employees, say the labor union relationships. Okay, we can have their role playing exercise in training programs there also. Yes. So, role playing we are using as an exercise. Interestingly, some of the organizations at the conceptual level are imparting training to their managers in terms of many skills which are the conceptual skills, and the conceptual skills, that is for the policy making, at the level of policy making, and at the level of perhaps also interpersonal relationships, also the global for example, business. When you are doing global business, you need some kind of exposure. So, training need not be always a classroom training, as we have discussed. For the senior chief executives, training is not that. See, I was told that one of the organization took all their staff to a place somewhere, I do not recollect, maybe Mussoorie or somewhere, Jaipur or somewhere, and the idea was about the training program. and then they wanted to give them some training. So, they took them to some place, and then they had so there was a experience sharing, there was a group discussion, and there was some conceptual analysis also. So, they tried to make the whole thing in such a way, so that it like looked like a picnic cum training cum development activity. Okay. So, the training programs have become extremely important issues for our organizations, and the organizations actually invest a lot of budget in this. And when we are trying to understand these training programs, every organization perhaps tries to make its schedule for the whole year, and the yearly schedule and the yearly budget they match, and there are training departments in most of the industries now, large industries I am talking about. They have a training and development department, and they conduct these training programs. So, I have decided to discuss more on training and development in my next lecture, because there are different types of trainings which need little bit in-depth analysis. In those in-depth analysis sessions, we will be discussing some more aspects of training. But before I go to the next session of training, I will show you a small video on the training program. Okay.